Hi, my name is Gloria White, and today is March the 29th, 2023, and I'm here with Joe Kolb. And this video is sponsored by the Heritage Museum of Montgomery County. Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good.
Good, good. Hey, Joe, were you born in Montgomery County?
No.
Okay. If not, where were you born?
I was born in Harris County, in Houston, Texas.
Okay, okay. So tell us about growing up and being born in Harris County in Houston, Texas.
At the time I was raised, I was born in 1943, if I can say that. You don't mind how old it goes back. You can add it anyway. So at that particular time, it was a pretty good place, I thought. Everybody got along pretty good. School was fun. You could, I ran around, I went barefooted most of my life, any chance I got. But I liked Houston. It took into my adulthood before I decided Houston had gotten too big and too different that I didn't like the environment anymore.
So tell us about your childhood growing up. In what part of Houston? Because Houston is a big city. So what part of the Houston area did you grew up in?
I'm trying to think. I guess it would have been kind of just south, a little southwest of downtown. An area that's become quite nice now. It's quite upscale now. When I was there, it was post-war homes going in West University Place. And back then, you have to realize that they were all little bungalow houses, very small, little two-bedroom homes, and very, very normal, very average. And it was a really neat area to grow up in, and school was very close, and we used to use the school grounds for playing on all the time. It was just it was a neat area. I liked it.
Okay. So what schools did you go to? What the schools? Name your schools. You remember your school name?
Yeah, I went to West University Elementary, and then I went to Pershing Junior High. And then I went to Lamar High School for about a year. I transferred over to San Jacinto High School in downtown. They had just started, this was in 1960, I guess, they had just started I believe they called it magnet school program, but Houston took Houston Technical College or University or whatever they called it, was going to become part of the HISD system. And they made San Jacinto the first school to put this into play. And they offered photography, they offered refrigeration, auto mechanics, machine shop, all kinds. They also had an art course in commercial art. And I transferred from Lamar to go over there and was doing okay in school. You know, I had my ups and downs in my classes, but I could draw, and I was always drawing, and the teachers were always telling me that I needed to do that during another time and not in class. So I thought, heck, they got this going on over there. I think I'll just go over there and take that and at least get me some kind of a vocation that I can try to make a living at. So I transferred.
So tell us about your mom and your dad.
Mom and dad were, Dad served in World War II. He was in the submarine service. I didn't know him. I was born, he just as he left, I was born right after he left to go in, and didn't see him until probably 1945. I think he was in the South Pacific for like 2.5, 3 years. And he came back. He had a laundry route. He worked for cleaners, and I just remember we didn't have a car. Our transportation was the laundry truck. Quality Laundry was the name of it, over off of Gray. And I can remember if we'd go to my grandparents' house, Mother would sit on the floor on the passenger side because there was no passenger seat. And the spare tire was behind his seat, the driver's seat. And then he had bags of dirty clothes and the rest of it. My sister piled on those like a big beanbag chair, and I sat on the spare tire behind him. Mother sat on the floor hanging on to the door. No seat belts, anything, and that was our main transportation for years.
So you just got sisters. You have any brothers?
I have 2 brothers and 1 sister, an older sister. And that's it.
Okay. So you went to school you transferred from Lamar to Senior Center.
Right.
It was a magnet school. Okay. So tell us about your experience when you
It
transferred.
was a polyvocational technical high school is what they call it.
Okay.
I just remember the
Can you
proper name.
repeat that again?
Polyvocational technical high school.
Okay. So tell us about your experience when you started there.
I was afraid. The first day when I showed up for class, some of the people who had been in the class a year before showed me their art portfolio, and I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, I thought I was a pretty good artist, but they did stuff, and I went like, oh man, I made a mistake. But we had a very, very good teacher. His name was Barbarossa, and he was a very accomplished artist and commercial artist. And he had a very good style of teaching. I liked his style so much and did well in the class that years later, when I would teach art classes in different places, I basically used his style, and it worked very well. And but he was a good instructor, and I was there. It was a 3-year course, but because I went in my junior year of high school, it was paced, so I just sped up the pace, and me and another student named John Martinez and I got to be friends, and we challenged each other all the way through, and so we completed the course in a year and a half instead of 3 years, and got our certificates and graduated and went from there.
Okay, so what did you do after graduation?
Well, I was very fortunate. Our instructor, NASA, was just moving to Houston, the Manned Spacecraft Center.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking for graphics companies, and one started up, it came from Washington, D.C., came down and started, and they were hiring local people, and he was hired to be the art director. And he came to me one day during class, and asked if I could come out and interview for a possible job out there. Which I said, we got all these other students. I said, I'm not the top of the class. I said, I'm sure there's some of these other people that are much better than me. Why would you ask me? Because I already knew that some of the other students had already been asking him about the job. I was a bit shy, believe it or not. People don't know me as being very shy, but when I was that age, I was fairly shy. So I didn't ask. And so I was very surprised when he asked me, and on the way out there, I said, what made you ask me? He said, you're not necessarily the best, but you're in the top 3 or so. And he said, but you do good work, and you work fast, and you're very neat. And he said, and that equates to money. Companies, they can make money if you're quick, fast, and you're neat, and you get the job done in a very timely way. And I ended up getting a job with a contractor at the Manned Spacecraft Center, which was really quite exciting. I was 18.
So were you still in school, or had you graduated?
I hadn't graduated from school
yet.
yet.
You still in school?
Yeah,
okay.
I was still finishing high school. So I went to night school, finished up my high school at the night school, and started working, and I was kind of the guy that was a new kid to all these other people that were professional artists that had been making their living at it. So I did the things that they didn't want to do. You know, I ran errands for them and did stuff like that. But I had enough time to get some chance on the board to draw and do some work, and they saw I was capable of doing it. And I hate to brag on myself, but the fact that I was able to do it and did it in a way that they ended up not only keeping me, but they promoted me, and I ended up being the shift supervisor at 19, which
and this was at NASA, right?
This is at NASA.
Okay. So how long did you stay there?
I was there about 3.5 years.
Okay. So I know, how did you meet your wife, Nancy?
I met her at a skating party. There was a skating rink in Chimney Rock, Bel Air Skating Rink it was called. And they had an after session party, and a buddy and I used to go out and roller skate a lot, and we went to it, and I just happened to see her talking to some of her friends, and something about her height. She was seemed tall. I was about, excuse me, I was about 5'10", a little over 5'10" when I was in high school, and she was like 5'8", something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I liked she was tall, I thought, and she was cute.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So after you met her, how long was it before you all got married?
Just under 5 years.
Under 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you all got married, were you still in Houston?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long did y'all stay in Houston once y'all got married?
We stayed in Houston until we were married in '64, and we stayed until '73,
Okay.
and we decided to come up here, come to
Okay.
Conroe.
So what decision made you all move to Conroe?
Actually, I had an aunt and uncle who had a small, kind of a little garage that they had made into a cabin up on a small lake out by Cut and Shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked motorcycles, always had some kind of a motorcycle. And so I had a dirt bike and thought this would be a neat place to go. I can ride my motorcycle around. So we came up to stay at their cabin, plus we could get it for free.
Mm-hmm.
And we liked it so much, and the people that lived around the lake talked about how they commuted to and from Houston. And so from that, when we got back home, we talked to my aunt. She worked for the Houston School District, and she had some friends that owned property around that lake, and they were wanting to sell cheap. And we decided to spur them on. Let's do it. And so we bought the property and put our sign on our house, put a for sale sign on it, and looked for a builder.
Okay, so you that was out in the Cut and Shoot area when you came.
Right, on
Okay.
Lake McRae.
On Lake McRae and Cut and Shoot. Okay, so once y'all actually found the house, got built, when did y'all move from Cut and Shoot to inside the city?
We stayed out there, I believe it was 76. Yeah, it was the latter part of 76. We decided to sell it,
Mm-hmm.
the house, and we had a pretty nice and pretty neat house where it was built. And we wanted to move into town. We got tired of being so far out of town that if we wanted to get a gallon of milk or pick up some eggs or something, we had to drive all the way back into Conroe. It was like a 7-8 mile trip, and the roads weren't all that great at that time.
Okay. So tell us, how many kids do you and Nancy have?
We have 3 children. We had 3 children. I take it back. We lost a son, our middle son, but we have 2 boys. It was all boys.
All boys.
All
Okay.
boys. Never got a girl. Always wanted a girl.
Okay. So once you came to Conroe, so were you still traveling back and forth to Houston?
I commuted. I was working for the telephone company then in the art department at Southwest and Bell downtown, and I would commute and leave very early in the morning and get on the road. Of course, at that time I could drive pretty close to downtown before the traffic got real bad.
Mm-hmm.
But when it got to where I hit the traffic just a little south of 1960 instead of Mount Houston, all of a sudden it was turning into something else, and it got to where it would take me so much time to get home in the evenings that I just decided I either had to move back to Houston or quit working downtown.
Okay.
And we chose to quit working downtown. My wife didn't work; she would stay at home. And in a discussion, she says, "If I'll get a job, I'll find a job here, and that'll help with the finances until we can get something going up here." And so she did. She went to work for Leone's dress shop at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife.
What was Leone's dress shop?
Leone's was kind of a high-end dress shop on the north end of town.
Okay.
And
on Fraser Street?
on Fraser, way out north Fraser, past the Loop.
Past the Loop, okay.
Past the Loop. It was people like, as we found out, Lady Hooper Schaefer and some people that were well known in Conroe, that were the people that had the money shop there. And it was kind of an exclusive sort of a dress shop. And she got the job because my wife's very attractive. And at that time, she was very trim, and she did modeling, and they hired her to be a model for the place as well as a salesperson. And she just has she's got a real winning personality, and it didn't take her long get to be well known by a lot of these customers that they liked her so much that the Leonis couldn't possibly let her go.
Okay, okay. So what did you do? So after because you said you got tired of commuting back and forth because of traffic. So what did you do after you left Southwestern Bell?
I went to and filed for unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
Went to one of the unemployment little meetings you had to go to and fill out. At that time, they used IBM cards. Familiar with those? The old IBM. They used to have IBM cards for computers that were a punch card.
Okay.
And you had to go fill out these cards, and then they'd turn those in, and you'd get whatever you're going to get per month from it. And I think back then it was like $60 a month or something for unemployment. And I remember sitting in this, like it was a classroom, filling this card out, and the guy telling us what to do. He said, now, if you get any work, you have to claim that. Then we deduct a certain amount from what you get per month. And after filling out about 3 of the dozen or so cards I was filling out, I stopped and I got up. I walked out and I just dropped them in the trash. And the guy said, where are you going? You can't do that. And I said, I can make more money washing cars on the corner than I can get from this. I said, I'd rather do that and do something and make money than if I make any dollars, I have to be deducted from it. I said, so I'd just go out. I'll do something.
Okay. So what did you decide to do after that?
I drove to the north end of town.
When you say north end of town?
Up on Fraser, up past the loop, almost to Willis. Mm-hmm. Turned the car around, and there was a little roadside park up there.
I know where it is.
And pulled in there, and during this time, I also had an epiphany. I became a Christian, born again believer in between that, quitting the job. And I just prayed, and I just drove back into town, and every business between north past the loop into downtown, I just walked into, knocked on the door, and I went and I asked, did they need any artwork? And took me well into town before I finally found one place that said they might be able to do something, and they asked for a card, and I didn't even have a business card. So I filled out a note that they had, on a piece of paper.
Do you remember that location?
And it was at the Plantation Professional Building, right off 336 North. Okay. And it was a company called Telemetrics that ended up going to the Woodlands. And then by the time I got into almost downtown Conroe, I stopped at a little place called McCurdy Printing and ordered some business cards. Decided if I'm going to be a business, I'll have business. I didn't know,
So, but that was an act of faith, though.
Yeah.
That was an act of faith. Yeah. So did you go all the way from North Fraser to South Fraser?
Pretty near.
Okay.
I had enough places that when I started having something to do, then I went home. I had me an area bedroom I'd set up and made a little studio out of, and that's where I'd work.
Okay.
Which was a real challenge because I had never not worked in an office somewhere or place of business, so I had to really work on getting up in the morning and having coffee and then doing some work, because it's real easy to just sit around and play some music and sit in shorts and a t-shirt and have a second cup of coffee and think about work.
So after you did that, Joe, do you remember what happened? How did you do it? Just that one day did you go do it on a regular basis before you actually got your first paying job after you had left Southwestern Bell?
Oh yeah, yeah. I went and gave my resignation, and I had to go through 3 exit interviews to get out, because if you're there past a certain amount of time, they feel like they got something invested in you, and of course. And I was in the art department. There were, out of 10 artists, there were 2 of us, myself being one, that did the highest production, and so they didn't want to lose us. That person quit too. I looked at the fact that if I wanted to continue to work in that art department, I went to Dallas to the art department there with the company for some reason, and noticed an artist there that was hunched over. He had a little small cubicle like mine. He'd been there 30 years.
Mm.
And I thought, I can't believe that this is the only art I'll do is what I do for the phone company for 30 years. And that bothered me. I really felt like I knew my abilities, and I felt like I can do so much more, and I'm gonna put myself on the market.
Okay.
And,
So that's what you did. You
That's
put
what I
yourself
did.
on the market. So as a commercial artist and illustrator, you said at the beginning when you started Southwestern Bell, you were just specifically at Southwestern Bell. So when did you act, and then once you left Southwestern Bell, can you remember your first commercial job you got after that?
I really have to think about that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it was for Revtex Marine that was out on 105. They were trying to put together some ads, and they had a little ad agency that was trying to work up some stuff, and I happened to run into him at the Conroe Cafe, I think it was called, downtown. It was on the old Conroe Hotel or Motel or something. It was on the corner of Fraser and Davis. And he was having trouble getting them to sign a particular contract on something. So I did a sketch of an idea. He took it to him and they bought it. And so he and I started working together a little bit. And this and that, dress shop, accents, accessories, advertising stuff. Before I got into it, I was not doing what I consider art, but it was art. It's all on art.
So you were doing advertising for and your advertising for these companies, like you said, the dress shop and accents. Those were going into the local paper.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what you're doing. Okay. Did you ever actually work at the Conroe Courier?
No, I didn't. But interesting, I was in there so much, I'd go in and find out about what I needed to do to prepare the art for how they wanted it. And every publication has a certain way they want the art to come in, and camera ready as it's called. And so going over there, one time somebody I had met just in passing knew I could letter pretty good. I could do calligraphy, and they had a Motto's grocery ad. And the person who had done it was gone, they were sick or something. And so I filled in, so I did it for them on the spot at the newspaper. And occasionally somebody would see me doing that, and they'd say, oh, I need a little illustration to go with this story I'm doing. Something. So I did a little illustration. I think I drew a little bird or something for some illustration. And before long, I was in there and I was doing that kind of stuff for the paper, but I didn't work for them. And then the lady who was handing out paychecks one time came walking around, and I happened to be in the layout department. She came by and she goes, I can't find your paycheck anywhere. And I said, well, I don't work for the paper. She said, well, you're over here so much, and everybody knows you here. And I said, well, that's because I work with the advertising department some, I work with the camera room some, I work with certain areas doing little odd jobs for them. And it wasn't that they were paying me to do it. I was swapping them out. I'd say, I need some copy set. And they'd say, well, we can set your type for you for that if you'll draw this for us. So I was swapping out. I did a lot of swapping out, a lot of barter stuff.
Okay.
And I did whatever I had to do that would give me either I would have to pay for something or I could make money with it. And that's how I look at commercial art. Commercial art means whatever kind of art and ability you may have, you're selling it.
Okay.
You know.
So I know you also did a lot of artwork, commercial artwork in the city of Conroe. I know. Can you tell us about some of the artwork you did for some of the organizations here in the county?
Yeah. It boggles my mind to try to remember.
You can start wherever you want to start.
It's hard to even know where to start. I did so many logo designs for so many small businesses and bigger businesses here. Hospital district, Sadler Clinic. Any business that needed something drawn, a brochure. I did one company, not only did I do a lot of design work for their advertising, but they had a new office and I suggested something in their entry lobby, so I ended up painting a mural on the wall.
Do you remember that
for them. And one was an import, some kind of little import
Mhm.
company. Um, there's some, it's been so long that
I know
I actually have trouble remembering.
I know you did. Tell us about what you did for the catfish. Cajun catfish.
When Cajun Catfish first started, they hired a company called JW Productions, and JW, I had done work for them for years for the Great Taste of Houston and other events. They were an event school promoters. And JW had a policy that if they were going to do an event, they had to have everything up to a certain point before they had a deadline. And the deadline, I think, was like June. And the people that were wanted to promote it, the Friends of Conroe, I believe, that started it, couldn't seem to get it all together. And so JW said, "We're not. If you go past this date, we're going to pull out. We're dropping it." And they had hired a lady named Barbara Medico to come on board and help out at JW Productions. Well, when they did, they pulled out, and because they had too many other events. So she says, "You hired me for that. What if I do it on my own?" And so they said, "Go for it." So she contacted them, and because I did all this artwork stuff for JW Productions, she contacted me. And so one of the first things I did is I drew the catfish, Willie. Willie B. Fried is what he's called now, but we didn't have a name the first year. And I designed this catfish. She did some art directing over my shoulder. She looked at it, she said it needs to look more Cajun somehow. So we tried to decide what would look Cajun, so I made his mustache kind of have a curl to it. And she said, "Yeah, that's pretty good." And I took, I decided I drew eyelids, heavy eyelids on him, and put a certain look on his face. And when I did that, she said, "Now that looks like kind of a Cajun look or whatever," and that became Willie B. Fried. And he's been reproduced a lot of times by people promoting the catfish, and where they would go out and copy it and paint it and stuff, and they didn't do him justice. You know, a lot of times I was really mad. I'd go around and say, "I'll do those." "Well, but we have to pay you to do them." And I said, "Yeah." But if you want them to look like Willie, but it got through, and I did that for Catfish Festival for years. But that started with that.
Okay.
And just kept growing. I also did the Crawfish Festival in Old Town Spring.
Okay, you did that one?
And I did that one. And then I worked on Great Taste. And
what is Great Taste? Tell us about the
Great Taste of Houston was one where all the restaurants in Houston, many of the restaurants would get together and they'd have a special event. It became too big to be indoors, so they went outdoors over in front of the Summit. They had two large blocks out there of empty property, and they'd set up a little village, looked like a village, and all the different restaurants would have booths out there, and they would bring food, and people would pay an amount to go to this festival and go through it and taste different food from different restaurants and caterers, and became quite a major event for 15 years, because I did work for them for 18 years altogether in doing that. And I built facades to go on the front of tents to look like, one time we do it where it looked like it was an old western town, the next time it would be a small, like a New England or a coastal looking town. And I designed these things, and then I'd get plywood and I'd cut them out and paint them and go and install them on the front of these tents. And Randall's stores at that time were a big promoter, a big sponsor, and they had a little train that they'd bring out. They'd run it, so we had a little town of Whistle Stop.
Oh, okay.
For years I did that.
Okay.
And actually they were probably one of my bigger customers for years. I did a lot of my work, probably 80% of my work was through them. And that's when my life changed from the standpoint of our income increased, and we started making a living.
Okay. And tell us again who you were working for when that changed. What, that was the Great Taste of Houston?
Great Taste, it's called JW Productions.
Oh, JW Production, okay,
Right.
Okay. And one thing you said about the summit, I know what the summit is now, so can you tell us about what's the summit, after the summit, it was the Compact Center, right? And then now it's a church. So I
Yeah,
remember that's
yeah,
a summit. Yeah,
yeah,
I remember that. That's pretty
yeah.
interesting. Okay, now I know you did something to downtown Conroe because we got benches downtown Conroe, and with different artists painted a bench. So tell us which bench that you painted
All right,
downtown.
I did two benches downtown.
Mhm.
The first one being the Strake, George Strait bench,
Mhm.
about the oil. When they had the program for the benches, it was to anything historical or to do with downtown business or connected in that way. So they had benches that covered the arts and covered the newspaper and covered uh, different, logging and stuff like this, the theaters. And I was in a meeting and I heard a comment about one of the benches, so I decided to, nobody was doing the oil field.
Mhm.
So I went to the museum. I knew they had a little booklet on George Strait and the kind of oil fields. I got that and came up with an idea on that, just read over it. That's when my presentation wasn't so much what I did on the bench, it was the fact that I showed a painted bench with an oil derrick attached to it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what sold it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the other bench? You said you did two?
I did one on the airport.
One on the airport.
The
Okay.
Conroe Airport was actually built during World War II. And it was a naval air station for a short time. And so I did a bench on called it Then and Now Aviation in Conroe. And,
Okay. So do you have any, this probably be a tough question for you, any favorite illustration or drawing that stands out among all the ones you've done? And if so, can you tell us why?
my favorite, just say, piece of art was a watercolor I did when we lived in Houston. And it's actually kind of become, I actually used it as a standard, as my signature watercolor. Not that I haven't done many, many more. There's something about it I liked, I don't know. And then I would think the one that was the most challenging is I painted a mural in a restaurant in the Woodlands. It was, at that time it was Rico's Bar and Grill, or Rico's Cantina, or whatever. They're not in business anymore, but it was a very large area. From floor to ceiling, it was about close to 20 feet tall, and then the length of it from the one interior section of it all the way across the front was like 145 feet. And that was all filled with a mural.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
that was a very challenging mural.
Do you remember what year that was?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
And so that was in the Woodlands of Rico's. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I did all his restaurants. He opened up several restaurants around the area and also over by Lake Houston. And I did every one he opened. I painted murals in the interior and covered all the walls. It wasn't just little spots. It was the whole thing.
Oh, okay. So that was. Do you have any assistants helping you when you do something that large, or do you do it all on your own?
I do it myself.
You do it all on yourself. Okay. I know you did an apprenticeship through Lee College. Can you talk about that?
I worked for Texas Department of Corrections, it was called at that time. It's TCMJ now. At that time, I went to work there as a supervisor of the print shop and the pre-press, for teaching typesetting, camera work, art, layout, design, this kind of thing. And the prison system had this Lee College offering an apprenticeship for inmates if they wanted to take courses. And they had one for commercial art or for graphics. Mm-hmm. And so I taught that through the Lee College. The whole time I was there, I was only with TDC a little over 3 years. Okay. That was, I would have stayed longer. I planned on staying longer, but it was so political, and I'm not real good at playing politics. If I wanted something done and I couldn't get it done through somebody fairly immediate to me, I just went over their heads. I just had no problem going to the director or president would come in. I would bypass people real easy. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like I was hurting anybody. And if I did, I didn't intend it to be hurtful to them, but if they weren't being cooperative and I wanted to get something done, I just went around them.
Okay. I know you part of a lot of local organizations in Conroe and in the county. Can you, even past and present, can you tell us about some of those? I know you was with the flag part too. You want to talk about that?
Flag part?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when the flag part, when Craig Campobella came up with the idea for the Texas, the Lone Star Flag Part Historical. Lone Star, he's gonna be mad I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, it's the Lone Star Monument or whatever, and Historical Flag Park.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the board beginning, I can't remember the official name he came up with, but he handpicked a number of people in town to be on this board called the Friends of the Flag. And I remember that. I was, where we lived, there was a uptown community district. It was, or the uptown district they called it, which was north of downtown. Just an older community that needed, the people that lived there were wanting to, they didn't have homeowners associations anymore and all that kind of stuff. So they were trying to do stuff to try to keep it, you know, litter free as much as possible and just whatever. And we get together for meetings, and I became president of that only because one of the meetings nobody wanted to do it. And they would say, well, if nobody does it, we just won't have it anymore. And I said, I'll do it if nobody else will. So that's how I got to be that. It wasn't like they were after me. I was willing to give my time for that. And my wife and I both were hand to hand on that. And then the Friends of the Flag. And then the day that I went to pick up this booklet that I got from the museum about George Strait for the oil bench, the director at that time was Sally Copley, and I had known her. She had worked at the Allied Bank years before, she and Gertie Spencer, in the marketing department. I did advertising for the bank. And so I hadn't seen her in years, and so she offered me a cup of coffee and a cookie. She bought me for a cookie, and she said, gee, we could sure use you on the board. And I didn't want to be on it, but she said, oh, we only meet once a month. Well, the first year after I was on it, the nominating committee, I was trying to think what they were called, as you know them, they came to me and asked, we'd like for you to be president. Would you like to be? No, I won't do it. My wife won't let me be on another president of another board. And anyway, but they said they would handle a lot of the stuff. They just wanted somebody who could hold the meetings, facilitate. So I did it. Well, I was also, because of the museum, when I joined it, I took the position on the Arts and Culture Commission down for the city. That was a mayor's appointed group. And by the second year on that, Dave Parsons, who had been the chairman for years, had probably helped develop it. I went on a trip. When I came back, I found out that I was a new chairman. And it was one of those things like, well, you missed a meeting.
They appoint you to
so here you are. So I did that. And there was another one I was involved in with that. But anyway, I was on like 4 different things at one time.
What about the crime theater? Were you a part of that? Or that's part of the Arts and Lines Committee, the crime theater?
No, never was. Never was. The only thing I had to do with theater is I ended up being a bit part in a play one time at the Owen Theater, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
You remember the part you played?
I can show you the part. That's it. I sat like this. I sat with my jaw hanging open, my hand moving, and one time the director said, don't move your hands so much, you're upstaging it. But it was an experience. I really enjoyed it, and I really realized how much of a family that the actors become when they're doing a play, how interconnected you get with them. And so for quite a while I'd see them, and I really felt like I was part of the theater for a while, you know, and enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but it's a lot of work. I didn't have that much time.
And so, but because you still work as an illustrator, commercial artist today, right? You hadn't retired.
Always, no,
Yeah.
haven't really retired.
Mhm.
I've come way back.
Mhm.
Uh, but you know, I never felt like I'd ever stop. You know, if you're an artist, you don't ever stop. You do art all the time, and at least I believe you do. And the artists that I know that are close to my age bracket,
Mhm.
they still draw and still do stuff. The ones that some of the people I knew that were in commercial art that don't do it anymore at all, don't even want a part of it, they usually were specialized and they worked in one field and they just did graphics only. Um, if somebody asked me to do anything, I'd do it. I'd paint signs on the side of buildings, letter aircraft, um, tanker trucks, moving vans. I remember a guy had a moving van and he had a giant tire on the side of it. That was part of his logo, was this great big tire. He couldn't find anybody to paint this giant tire because the thing was like 10 feet tall or something. And I went out and I did it in this driveway, went out there and did it. I just didn't turn anything at all, and I didn't know how to do it. I would practice. I used to do caricatures at events. I used to do downtown events in Houston and draw caricatures.
You still do it?
Still do. And I really enjoyed that. Almost got in trouble when I worked at TDC because I did caricature of the director one time. And he called me to his office, and I thought I was in trouble. And all it was he didn't realize that I could draw. And he had 3 sons, and he wanted me to do pen and ink drawings of his kids for him, So after that, I started, all the different people in that headquarters department had me doing artwork for them on the side. But
well, that's good. You had a wonderful career, and then it all started because you said I remember you said early in the interview you said you liked to do, so you went to art school.
Yeah.
And you and a commercial artist, and I know you've done a lot of artwork for a Heritage Museum in Montgomery County. I know you've done postcards because I remember the drawing you did for. Tell us about the drawing you did when we was trying to get the straight grade house moved in.
Oh well, it was just a quickie sketch. Really, I just did a quick pen and ink drawing of the house. I'd been out to see it, took photographs of it. I just did a quick drawing of it on wheels, being whizzed down the highway, and talking about where it's coming or moving, if possible, I think it's kind of an interesting story, personally. We'll see what the public thinks. When I signed up for art at that Polyvocational Technical High School, that's not what I went over there to sign up for. I went over there to sign up because I also enjoyed working with, playing with electronics. Had an uncle who gave me a Heath kit one year when I was like 14 or 15.
You said Heath kit?
Heath kit.
Okay.
And these were kits you could get. You could make your own radios, your own televisions, all kinds of stuff. And he got me one, and I put together a shortwave radio. And I thought that would be something I like doing. I like messing around with stuff like that. So when they started the polyvocational school over there, I went over and I was actually sitting in a large classroom with all these other young students. And I was signing up for the radio and television course. I had a good friend, childhood friend, that he also liked radio control stuff, and him and his parents both built radio controlled aircraft. And he would build little radio stuff. We'd both get together and make things together. And he was the only child, very nice guy, very, very nice family and everything. But being an only child, to me, he could be spoiled. There were things that if the rest of us could do something, he could do it better. He had the money to do it. So I'm sitting there, and he came in to that class, that day of signing up, registration day. He came walking in and I asked, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm over here to sign up for radio and TV." And the thing that flashed through my mind, I really ended up in art, commercial art, out of pure jealousy, envy. I thought, I'm gonna be in class. They had already told us that anything we did, we'd have to get our own parts and all this kind of stuff. We had to pay for that separate and do this. And we were, where we lived in Houston is only because my grandmother had built a house in West University area back in the 30s for $3,000, I think it cost to build it, in an area that hadn't grown up yet. And that's the only reason we lived there. My dad made a good living. We ate. We had clothes on our back. We had a roof over our head, but we didn't have much more than that, you know. And we just lived very average. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom, so she had no income, and we were happy. But when he came in, I could see him going to a particular electronics store in downtown Houston. I had gone with him before, and I went to buy a few parts, and he went there and he needed a whole bunch of parts, and he laid down the list, and his dad gave him a $100 bill, plunked it down. This was back in 1959 or 60, you know. I was hoping to scrape together. I think I'd scraped together, took bottles back to the store, and got enough money to be able to buy the little $2 parts that I needed. And I just remember when he came in, I thought, good night, he's gonna be in that class, and I'm gonna be out scrounging for parts. I used to go through garbage cans when people throw out radios. Sometimes I'll put them on trash heaps. I go around and take them, and then I get the parts out of them. And I made my own cabinets. If I had a little radio, I'd make my own cabinet. I had wood shop in school, and so I could put things together. I knew he went and bought a cabinet that was specifically designed for that. When he'd get through with something, it looked like he went to an electronics store, you know, bought it. He did beautiful stuff. I mean, he was very talented in that way. But I just didn't want to do that. I thought, I don't want to go through school with him always going to the store and get what he wants, and I'm out in the trash can looking for parts. And so while I had been waiting, I had been drawing pictures, and I'd even started, some of the people sitting around me saw me drawing, and they asked me to do the picture of somebody, so I did a little cartoon sketch of the guy sitting over here and the girl sitting over here. And, do me, and I'd do them, do a little caricature. And so I thought, when it came around, I noticed on there commercial art, so I scratched out the radio and TV and checked off commercial art. And that's how I got started. And then I was just blessed.
You were blessed, yeah.
Totally blessed, all the way through, all the way.
That's a wonderful, amazing story, because all that doodling you was doing, and you're still doing it. And you made money. You made a good living.
The only thing I've ever made a living at
is doodling.
Doodling. Just doodling, just drawing, painting, do signs. I did sign work just to fill in. And like I said, I would never say no. Somebody says, well, I'd give somebody $100 if they could do something over here. So I'd do it. How are you going to do it? I'll figure it out. And you know, so I've had a very casual life in that respect. I've never really, I've had my worries. There've been financial times that we were going to lose our house that we built out on the lake because of lack of income. That I thought I'd just make all kind of money. We had some savings when we sold the house in Houston, in West University Place. That's what got us up here, because we bought the house for like $14-something thousand in Houston, and I did a lot of work on it. My wife and I both. She's very good at decorating. I did a lot of outside stuff to it, and modifications and planting and painting and stuff. And it turned out when we sold the house, we ended up getting about 4 times that for it. We moved up here, paid for the property, got the house built, and didn't have that big a mortgage. But just upkeep and everything. Well, it would it'd get to the point where we sold a car. I just had paid off a car, a little Toyota station wagon, and it was still worth enough that when we were 3 months behind on the house note, so I sold it and caught up on the house payment. One time we came home and the lights weren't on. We wondered why the lights weren't working, and come to find out Sam Houston Co-op had pulled the meter off the side of the house because we hadn't paid the light bill. So that was, God took care of that one, because Roy Harris, I met Roy Harris, and Roy Harris had a trailer for sale in an area that was in Conroe, old timers would know, between Main Street and Fraser, there was, at the south end, it split, it's called the Y. You remember that? It's called the Y. I'm sorry, that's not good, I should look at the camera. And he had a trailer, and he sold me the trailer to do my business in. And I had a glitch where people weren't paying right away, and so I couldn't pay him. So I went to him and I said, I have to let you have the trailer back because I can't make the payments on it. I've been doing some work, but I haven't collected money. And that prompts me to remember what your earlier question. One of the very first things I did money group for was for the Presbyterian Church organization that had a place up in the hill country. I think it was called Yahweh Camp, up in the hill country. And I did a whole newspaper. I made the newspaper, illustrated it, did all the typesetting, and put together this publication for them. And also for John Osteen, for John Osteen's church in Houston, I did a mural, and I did a setup for early publication he was doing from the church when his church was small.
Okay.
When it was in the smaller building, way back. And anyway, that kind of got me connected with different people in that room. So I started meeting people through that, and of course people that he knew and people other people knew would get my name and they'd call me up. But anyway, so where was I at?
You had met Roy Harris and you had
the trailer. Oh, I couldn't pay him. Well, he said, I'll tell you what. He said, don't worry about it. When you have the money, just pay it. Well, I went 10 months in that trailer without paying him. And when I finally, things picked up, when I first started out, I had my business Mustard Seed Studio.
Mustard Seed, okay.
And when I finally got the money, I went to his office to pay him, and I said, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. He said, I just felt like when I met you that you would be an honest young man, and I could trust you. And of course, that started a relationship with him and stuff. I did little drawings for him from time to time, but not the card he gives out. But anyway, so some of those things helped connect me into Conroe. But it's all been pretty fascinating to us, but that's everything I did, like I say, I tried to get a job selling real estate for a while. I took a real estate course in Houston, ended up getting in with a developer up on Lake Livingston, and I went up there. By this time we had a new Blazer and bought, and we were doing okay, pretty good financially.
So you were still in Conroe, right?
Still in Conroe. So I went up there to sell properties up there. Never could sell a property. I just didn't have the knack for that.
Were you doodling while you were waiting for the people to come?
But I was doodling, and I doodled up a booklet to show prospects of what it could look like with their house on this piece of property. Like you could build a little cabin up on stilts, up on pilings. I had all these ideas. And so I doodled them and put them in this booklet. Well, some of the other salespeople with this developer saw it and said, would you do one for me? Could you put me a little booklet together? And I said, yeah. So we'll pay you. And so only money I made in real estate was the money I made from doodling for the art.
But it's in your blood. It's in your blood, Joe. So you're in Montgomery County now. Do you remember any kind of disasters that occurred in the county since you guys been here? Can you tell us about some of those?
The first month we moved here, the house we built on Lake McRae, we had a friend that had a beach house, and we really liked the beach house, but we didn't want to live at the beach because everything corrodes and everything to the salt air. But so when we built our house at the lake, we built on pilings. We built it about 12 feet in the air, 12, 14 feet up in the air. And 2 weeks after we closed on the house and moved into it, there was heavy rains at that time in Conroe, in this area, and Lake Conroe was supposed to take several years to fill up. It filled up that first that month, June, I believe, and it rained so much that the water coming into the creek where that fed Lake McRae, which was Caney Creek, it overflowed the dam, created a situation. The dam broke. The water continued to flood even higher and covered some of the house next door to us only had about 8 inches of the roof sticking out of the water. Our house looked like an island. It was just floating right in the middle of the lake at that time because we were up so high. And that's what saved it, was that. But that flood hit, and I had that blazer that I mentioned I had. I was working in Houston, and when I heard about it, I called. They talked about the flooding in Conroe was so bad that I worked for Southwestern Bell at that time, and I called a dispatcher, and they connected me to a guy that worked that was out in one of the trucks up here doing some work, and he called me back, and he was sitting in his truck up on the highest spot he could find, a little east of Conroe, and he said, "Man, it's water all around me." He said, I told him where I lived, and he said, "Oh, Lake McRae, the dam broke out there, and it's flooding there." And so I immediately, my boss said, "Go home." So I jumped in the car and took off. And when I got to 105, just a little east of 105, the bridge there, a mobile home had been washed off and came down and had wedged up against the side of this bridge over 105 and blocked the water, and so water and the businesses and everything around there are all going under. And the only way I got through is that a DPS officer said, he saw me and he said, "Well, you're in a four-wheel drive, you can go." And the only thing was, the vehicle I had was, most of them were four-wheel drive, but we had custom ordered it to be a two-wheel drive because I didn't want that noisy thing. I didn't need a four-wheel drive anyway. I just like to look up. And so he let me through, and I got there and found out that on that side of the lake, that little part of the lake at that end of it, we were about the only house that wasn't inundated. And my wife had walked out. She said she had chest-high water. She was hanging onto the trees to get out, to get up on the road to walk down, and there was a home there that people there had everybody come to their house and gather. And that was quite an event.
Do you remember what year that was?
73.
73? Okay. So is there any other event that you wish for future generations to know about, or something that we hadn't talked about you would like to share?
That's a very good question. That's a weighty question when you think about it. What do I think about? Well, when it comes to the area of the arts, everybody has a definition of what is art and what they consider to be art. And that's such a broad brush that it's hard to concentrate down to a single thing about it. But good, talented people who, some people, no matter how talented you might be, I didn't have the kind of formal training that some have had, where they've gone and studied for years at university and gone overseas or whatever. But I got the basics, and I had a natural talent, and I had a good instructor that in a year and a half's time took us through so many different forms of commercial art and design and layout and everything that had to do with making money at it, the art, the business of art, that I had a good foundation. I see many artists today, young people coming up, and they're not getting a foundation. And they're not getting a foundation in a lot of things, but if they're going to be in art, I would say to them, take some lessons from somebody who can really teach, and that's going to be hard to find, but seek it out there, and then draw. There used to be a program on Channel 8, kids show, Commander Mark used to come on and teach kids how to draw, and his mantra was draw. And I would tell that to anybody, if somebody's into literature. I had a son that was very good at writing, and I said, well, if you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be an artist, do art. And do it, and do whatever art it comes natural to you, and then stretch yourself out, broaden your borders, and try things you haven't tried before. You just might have a knack for something that nobody else has, or that somebody wants. If you want to make a living at it, I look back over my life and I realize how totally rare it really is to start out at 18 years old and actually make your way through life. You're living homes that we've bought and built, cars we've owned, travels we've done over the years of a lifetime that was strictly done on my talent. And I just thank God for that, because all the ideas, I'd pray before I do any big murals. You know, first one I did, I'm like, well, am I gonna do it? You know, a lot of people get down and get a little paintbrush like this, you know, a little small paintbrush and doing stuff. They work on a little painting like that sound. And I'd go up and look at something that was like 12 feet high and 40 feet long or something like this. And I'd go in there, I went in there with a brush that wide, sometimes using rollers to do basic stuff. I'd be there putting, so what are you gonna do the sky with? How are you gonna do the clouds? I got a roller I use for that. I just learned to tweak a roller a certain way and make it look right. And a lot of that was because you can do it with just a brush, but that was gonna take 2 days extra to spread that much paint. I could put on a roller and do it in 2 hours. And so everything I worked at a lot of times was based on, let me come up with a way to do this quick so I can earn the money I'm gonna make. And instead of doing one a month, I can do 2 a month. You know, I mean, that's how I thought. I was business. And I'd have people ask me to keep my palettes. I'd have some people say, can I have your palette that you just did? And I'd say, sure. And they just wanted, I knew a couple of them were going to take and do something with it. And I said, yeah. They'd say, could you write your, I'd say, sure, you can have that palette. They'd say, would you write your name on it? And I'd go, no. Because now you're going to turn it into a piece of art. That's an accident. You know, that's not a piece of art. If you want me to sign, it's going to cost you. I remember one time I did a watercolor picture and I gave it as a gift to somebody. And after several years, they were moving and they said, oh, hey, I'm not going to have room for this. I'll give it back to you. Well, if you don't know this, if anybody sees this video and you're talking and somebody gives you a piece of art that they have created, you don't give it back to them. That's a major no-no. Pass it on. If you can't use it, maybe you don't like it that much, pass it on, give it to one of your children, give it to a relative or something that's just moving into a new home, give them a housewarming gift. Do that with. But you don't return it to the originator. And when this person gave me that piece of art back, I ended up putting it in a show. And I didn't really want to sell it. I just put it in the show because I was asked would I put something in. So I put this really huge price on it, you know, like thousands, a couple $1,000s. And they came to that show. That person I had given that art to, they have to come to that show. And they saw it, they said, oh my gosh, if I'd known it was worth that much, I wouldn't have given it back. So, and another guy came and asked me, he said, wow, he said, that's really nice. So you want a couple of $2,500 for it? And I said, I'll take $2,500 for it. I said, I don't want to sell it, but if you want to give me $2,500, it's yours. I will sell it for that. But you know, I had art in my house. I had people come over to visit one time. A particular fella, he and his wife had come over for some kind of a get together, and when he was leaving, he liked this one painting I had done. I really like that. I like to have that. And I said, yeah, how much did you pay for it? And he told me how much you paid for it. I said, yours. You're going to sell it right off your wall? And I said, yeah. I said, I can do another one. I can paint more. But I never duplicated. I was not a duplicate. Any painting I did, I know art. So I have some art from an artist that discovered, we liked her work way back when we first got married. My wife bought a couple pieces. And I accidentally went by this person's studio, and they didn't expect anybody to come in, and their person in the front had said, oh, go on back. And I went into this back area that they worked in. I went back there, and they had the same picture lined up, and they were painting. the same picture multiple times to make copies of it, hand-painted copies of it, but I thought I had a unique one-off painting. And so I just said, I'm never gonna do that. I'll be a machine, I'll paint as many as you want, but if I do a painting of one thing, I won't duplicate it. If you wanna take and reproduce it, you can, but I'm not gonna do that.
All right, Joe. I thank you so much for this time, this opportunity, and thank you for your wonderful story.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
All right.